What is the cost when it comes to jobs and the economy of the long-term lockdown? What is the cost of this lockdown? Well, it's not hard to find it out because we can just look at some of these headlines. Let's look at this one, and I'll read it out for you. Double dip recession is on the way. Lockdown number 3 is set to cost us 390 million pounds a day after Britain shuts up shop, fueling fears of financial Armageddon. Financial Armageddon. Can you imagine? That's what we're facing. And it goes on even further. You can look at this headline, and that's this. This is shocking to actually hear. It says this: UK to face worst recession in 300 years as COVID crisis continues. Worst recession in 300 years. It's really, really hard to imagine. And, you know, I was taking a taxi home the other night, and I make sure I take the tube every morning. I take the Northern Line into work, and I take a taxi home every night because I want to support our taxi drivers here in London. I always take a taxi home, and I was talking to one of the taxi drivers, a black cab driver, and his name was Chase. And it's a big shout out to Chase. That's spelled C-H-A-C-E. And I get a lot of repeat drivers because there's not much business out there, and I go from the same place every night. And a lot of these drivers literally drive around all day and get 1 or 2 fares. And Chase was driving me home, and he said, Brian, he said, you're my second fare in 7 hours. And I think my fare was 20-some pounds. I mean, just think about that. He's riding around in a taxi cab that he spent 65,000 pounds on. Brand new electric taxi, some of these vehicles they're investing in. He's doing 1/10 the business that he was doing pre-lockdown. He cannot survive economically right now. But it gets worse. He said, Brian, he said, I need to get out of the house. I can't sit at home and watch another movie. I'm going out of my brain. I just rather would go out there and do something. That's the problem, what we don't see with this lockdown. People aren't doing anything. Same with unemployed. It's enough to drive your mental health insane. And unfortunately, even though Chase is out of the house, he's driving around alone in the front of these taxis. And this is something I spoke with Steve McNamara about, who is the chairman of the LTDA, one of the London Taxi Drivers Association. And he said, Brian, not only are our taxi drivers experiencing serious financial repercussions, and this goes for all taxi drivers, from Ubers to black cabs to minicabs. He said also they're alone most of the day, and they suffer some very serious mental health issues. So, and again, I want to appreciate that. And that's just an example of how that recession is really hurting real people in the field. And Chase, I appreciate you. And as I said to you in the taxi the other night, let's stay positive. I've got a lot of big changes I want to make here in London that supports you. I can't believe that the way that the current mayor disrespects taxi drivers in this city, makes you jump through hoops, doesn't acknowledge you as part of the TfL structure. It's ridiculous, and we're going to change all that when I become mayor. The truth is this, and this was said by Luke Johnson, which is one of the most prominent entrepreneurs here in London. He was one of the founders of Pizza Express, one of the board members of Channel 4, and he said to me during one of my episodes, he said, quote, he said, Brian, the economy is us, and we are the economy. You cannot separate the two. And yet your current crop of politicians every day says you get a choice. You can have money in the economy, or you can protect lives. We can't have both. You can have one or the other. And the truth is this: not only can you have both, you must have both. There is no way of doing this because the economy is us and we are the economy. All of your interactions throughout the day are what causes the economy, and that helps you with your physical health and your mental health. Those are inextricably linked, and we can't choose one for the other. And we're seeing it right now. We've locked down the country, and we're seeing 560,000 lives are going to be lost. Depression rates doubling. We're seeing how these are always going to be linked, and they always will be linked. We are the economy. You must understand that. You cannot separate the two. You cannot separate wealth and health. If you have wealth with no health, it makes no difference. If you have health with no money, you actually have no health. You have no NHS. You have nothing to support your health. These are linked. And we've already seen some of the massive problems happening because of lockdown. And we've seen a record number of redundancies in the UK. 370,000 people lost their jobs between August and October. That is the highest in UK history. In history, right? And we know that causes issues. And you can see this headline from the BBC, the unemployment rate, how many people are out of work? It's asking that question. The truth is this: UK unemployment is likely to reach 2.6 million people because of this lockdown. 2.6 million people, according to the government's economic watchdog. All right. That would be 7.5% of working age people, 7.5% unemployment. And the Bank of England admitted that unemployment this year is very hard to predict, saying, quote, there's a chance it could rise as high as 10%. 10% unemployment is something this country hasn't seen since the days of Margaret Thatcher, since the days where this country was dying. We cannot see levels like that. We cannot. It's going to affect everything. But it doesn't stop with unemployment. Look at savings. How many of you are finding your savings are dwindling because of this lockdown? And it turns out that the Resolution Foundation found out that 54% of adults in families from the lowest income bracket were forced to borrow more to cover everyday costs like food and housing. So we've got no savings left. Their saving is dwindling right now. And also, nobody is spending. Look, UK new car registrations in 2020 have sunk to a 30-year low. Nobody is spending. Car registrations are down to a 30-year low. That just shows you no one is spending money, which means no economic activity. And finally, evictions. Since April, we've seen at least 90,000 people in the UK that have been threatened with homelessness. And more than half of these have already lost their accommodation, right? And this article in The Guardian that goes and shows on this, it says this, and I quote, charities say data shows a new cohort of homeless people who have slipped through the cracks despite protections such as the ban on evictions and a government scheme to house the homeless during the coronavirus crisis. So even though we've put through mandates and restrictions and we've postponed and put a hold on evictions, we still see them happening and we still see homelessness increasing. This is unacceptable. We have to acknowledge the massive economic costs this is that we are facing, the unemployment, the evictions, the loss in savings, and the pure economic damage that we're going to face. And that's all going to come back in months from now, years from now, decades from now. Scarring, long-term scarring of the economy is what our chancellor called it just months ago.